Hey everyone, what's going on? I know it's been forever since I made a video, like I always say, and hopefully I'll start to make videos again here, but just this year has been really stressful, like lots of family things and money problems, and at the beginning of the year I also did have a couple strikes, and I have some old music stuff on here that I don't want to lose on YouTube, so I kind of took a break and then that break just kept on going, but I might explain that in a different video because there's lots of things I want to talk about as far as the whole conspiracy movement and the whole truth movement and how everything is controlled and lots of people don't realize this. But that's for another video. In this video, I want to show how a lot of these recent events, they're all seemingly connected back to the Las Vegas attack in 2017 and also the Manchester Arena bombing that happened in 2017. Remember the Ariana Grande concert? And things such as Jason Aldean being in the news the same day as Tupac and Kevin Spacey being in the news. And we also had the death of Sinead O'Connor, the death of Tony Bennett, the death of Angus Cloud. All of these things are all related back to the Manchester Arena bombing and the Las Vegas attack. So basically, on July 18th, the mainstream media had these two stories in there, right? And they even, on my phone, they even have them right next to each other, which really stuck out to me. But they have the story about Jason Aldean and all of the backlash he received over his new music video called Try That in a Small Town, that is apparently a racist song. And just below that, they have a story about a new search warrant and the murder for Tupac. And right away, what stands out is that Jason Aldean was the guy playing at the Las Vegas attack when it happened. And Tupac, he got murdered or he got shot in Las Vegas after the Mike Tyson fight in 1996. So we got these two connections to Las Vegas. And another thing that stands out right away is that Tupac, the album that released right after Tupac died was called The Dawn, Kill Illuminati, right? Kill Illuminati, the 7-Day Theory. And think about it, Illuminati. Jason Aldean just so happens to have a tattoo of the Jack of Spades and the Ace of Spades on his arm. And back in the 90s, they have this Illuminati playing card game, and the Las Vegas card just so happens to have the Jack of Spades and the Ace of Spades. So what are the odds that, the Las Vegas attack, one of the biggest attacks in the history of the United States, just so happens to have the guy playing the concert with the Jack of Spades and the Ace of Spades on his arm, just like how the Las Vegas attack, or the Las Vegas Illuminati playing card has this. And then they release these two stories about Tupac and Jason Aldean together. And of course, Tupac obviously knew about the Illuminati. You wouldn't write Kill Illuminati in your album. And if you've ever looked into the Illuminati, you'll understand that they operate by signs and symbols and letters and numbers, which are also signs and symbols. But there's an ancient practice called gematria or gematria, which is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases, such as A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and you add up the letters. If you write out Tupac's name, Tupac Amaru Shakur, it just so happens to equal 58 in this language of gematria. And this stands out because the search warrant issued for Tupac it was actually issued on July 17th. And if you go from July 17th to the day that Tupac died, it just so happens to be 58 days. So 58 days before his death anniversary, his name equals 58. Tupac Shakur also equals 58 with the K exception, but this is also interesting because remember how Tupac was on Death Row Records that was owned by Suge Knight, and Suge Knight was with Tupac when he got shot? And look at Suge Knight just so happens to be 58 years old right now. Suge Knight, 58 years old. Another interesting thing is how Tupac had actually changed his name to Machiavelli before he died, right? Machiavelli, which is a play on this guy right here, Niccolo Machiavelli. And notice this guy died at the age of 58. And what's interesting is this guy also, in his book called The Prince, or his writing called The Prince, he wrote how it might be smart for an elite person to fake their death to fake out their enemies, right? So, you know, and a lot of people thought that Tupac faked his death and he changed his name to Machiavelli, and everything with Tupac was by the number 7. So it's interesting, this guy would die at the age of 58, right? And Tupac Amaru Shakur equals 58. Now we're getting this search warrant 58 days before his death anniversary, while Suge Knight is 58 years old. And don't forget his work, The Prince, right? That's where the whole staging death thing came from. And remember, Tupac's mother died in 2016, right? Like just days after Prince, the singer, died. And in relation to Tupac dying or getting shot in Las Vegas after the Mike Tyson fight, if you look up Mike Tyson just currently, he has fought 58 fights. So Mike Tyson's fought 58 fights. And another thing in relation to Mike Tyson, since 2020, I've been talking about how Mike Tyson and the Roy Jones Jr. fight with Mike Tyson was connected to the Las Vegas attack and the Manchester Arena attack, because originally that fight they announced it on July 23rd of 2020, and it was supposed to take place on September 12th. And if you went from that date, it was 51 days. And when I looked up Roy Jones Jr., I noticed he was 51 years old, and his full name equals 233, which is the 51st prime number. And I looked into his 51st fight, and Roy Jones Jr.'s 51st fight just so happened to be against Antonio Tarver, and it was at the Mandalay Bay Event Center. And I was like, that's pretty interesting, you know? The Mandalay Bay Event Center, where the Vegas attack was, and I think this guy was even 51. The guy he beat was even 51 years old at that time. But then I looked up Mike Tyson's 51st fight, and Mike Tyson's 51st fight just so happened to be at the Manchester Arena, where the Manchester bombing was. And that bombing was, once again, connected. It was like 4 months and 9 days before the Vegas bombing, and Las Vegas equals 49, and they said the shooter at the Vegas shooting was born on 4/9, and a bunch of other stuff. Mike Tyson equals 49. But his 51st fight was at the Manchester Arena, and Roy Jones Jr.'s was at the Mandalay Bay. And I was like, that's pretty crazy. There's some weird connection with boxing going on with these two attacks. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I looked up this guy, Julius Francis, that Mike Tyson had beat in the Manchester Arena, and Julius Francis is currently 58 years old, which I thought was interesting, too. His 58 fights and all this stuff going on with 58. And another thing I later pointed out was that fight ended up taking place on November 28th, the Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. But another person who fought was Jake Paul, and he fought Nate Robinson, right? Nate Robinson, and I was like, I bet there's something connected to Jake Paul. And when I looked up Jake Paul on his Wikipedia, it talked about how earlier in 2020 he got in a fight in Las Vegas after the Tyson Fury fight, right? This guy named after Mike Tyson. And there's a bunch of interesting things with how it connects back to Russia invading Ukraine and so on, because one of the Klitschko brothers from Ukraine, he actually lost his fight to Tyson Fury. But notice how Tyson Fury is also from Manchester, England. And this stands out because there's just a story on ESPN today about how Mike Tyson is going to help this guy, however you say his name here, fight Tyson Fury on October 28th in Saudi Arabia. And I'll leave some video links in the description, but if you go back to around the time of the Russia invading Ukraine, we got a story in the news about Mike Tyson saying he wanted to box Putin or something like that. Can't remember what it was for sure, but there's a story about Mike Tyson, which made no sense to be put in there. And there's this big narrative with Donald Trump and how the media wanted him to box Putin and a bunch of stuff. But I'm pretty sure I talked about this guy at some point in that video because he's from Cameroon, and I was having a bunch of synchronicity with Cameroon around that time. But I don't want to get too far off topic, but all of that stuff with Donald Trump was connected to when he touched the Western Wall, and how in Hebrew Gematria and the Hebrew letters, his name equals 424, just like some form of the Messiah. And the guy who said that was Lev Parnas. He said Donald Trump was like the Messiah of Ukraine because of this number 424. And Donald Trump just so happened to go to Israel and touch the Western Wall on the date May 22nd, 2017, and he touched the wall at exactly 4:24 p.m. And if you write out Donald Trump in all capital letters with a cipher that's important to capital letters, his name equals 424. And then last summer, his wife died 4 months and 24 days after her birthday, and a whole bunch of other things with this number 424 and Donald Trump and how it links up to Ukraine and Russia. But the reason I'm bringing all of this up is because Donald Trump touched the Western Wall on the exact same day as the Manchester Arena bombing. It was May 22nd of 2017. Donald Trump touched the Western Wall on this day. And to go even further with how Jason Aldean is related to this, look at the single for his song, Try That in a Small Town. It just so happened to release on May 22nd, the anniversary of the Manchester Arena bombing. And if you go from May 22nd to the day that him and Tupac were in the news, it just so happens to be a span of 58 days. Another interesting thing in regards to Mike Tyson is that the upcoming Super Bowl is going to be held in Las Vegas, and it just so happens to be Super Bowl 58, and it's on the date 2/11. And this date might stand out to you because that's the date that Mike Tyson actually lost to James Buster Douglas, probably the biggest loss that he's ever had in his career, to James Buster Douglas. That was also on the date 2/11, which was the 42nd day of the year, and it was in Japan that equals 42, and Tyson equals 42, and think about Japan and World War and so on, War 42, World War 42, the odds were 42-1. 42 is this number all around black people all throughout history, so it's just interesting how it all seems to connect back to Mike Tyson in an odd way. Mike Tyson also turned 51 years old right after the Manchester Arena bombing, to go with all that 51 stuff I talked about before, but James Buster Douglas even born on 4/7, which 47, the 47th prime number is 211, and Buster Douglas equals 47, so absolutely, his full name even equals 211, but, you know, once again, there's something interesting about that. Super Bowl 58 is going to be on 2/11, the day that James Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson. And something I should have pointed out a long time ago in this video was the fact that the Las Vegas attack where Jason Aldean was playing, it actually killed 58 people that day. So 58 people died in the Las Vegas attack, right? Think about all of these 58s that are going on. And then we got Super Bowl 58 that's going to be held in Las Vegas on 2/11. And if you remember, just days before all the controversy with Try That in a Small Town, Jason Aldean supposedly had a heat stroke when he was playing a concert in Hartford, Connecticut. And he was playing the song Crazy Town, but notice how heat stroke also equals 58 in the language of Gematria. So heat stroke 58. Then all of a sudden, 58 days after the single of his song releases, they put a news story out there about how his song is racist and so on. But what I thought was so interesting about him having that heat stroke, if you looked it up, he was playing his song called Crazy Town while he had a heat stroke. And if you go back a few months to April, I had this crazy synchronicity with the band Crazy Town. Crazy synchronicity, but I DJ'd on like St. Patty's Day, and I played the song Butterfly because it was for like a 40th birthday party, and I played the song and everyone was like, oh man, I forgot about this song, blah, 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 you know? And then like a few weeks later, my friend had messaged me about Crazy Town or something like that. And then all of a sudden Crazy Town was in the news because the band got in a fight, this band called Crazy Town. And when I was researching this band, I found out that Jason Aldean had a song called Crazy Town. And around the same time, I was noticing a pattern with The Price is Right again and this father-priest symbolism that I talked about in 2017, such as I talked about this priest who got kicked out of the church, who was my old priest, for molesting kids, and there's always been this thing that he molested me and whatever else, but his name was Father Fitzgerald, and then like 2 weeks later we had the crash of the USS Fitzgerald, and all kinds of stuff. There was tons and tons of stuff with priests going on. I was watching the Jesuit anniversary that year, and on the Jesuit anniversary, I got a phone call from Las Vegas, which I thought was strange, and it was just like a telemarketer or something. There was nobody there. It was the only phone call I got that day. And then 3 days later, the guy who got the perfect showcase on The Price is Right, named Terry Neese, all of a sudden started reaching out to me on my blog, telling me all this stuff. And then he was from Las Vegas. Even when he was on The Price is Right, he was wearing a shirt that said Las Vegas. And then the very next day, there was the Las Vegas attack. So there's a bunch of stuff. Maybe I'll leave a link to them videos in the description. But moral of the story is, when I saw this Crazy Town by Jason Aldean, it reminded me of all that stuff. And there was some stuff with priests going on around this same time. So I wondered if there was something important to the Las Vegas attack back in April. But something else that I pointed out was that when I was looking up this song, it said that it was one of the, at the time I read it as it was the main song, but it was an official theme for SummerSlam 2022 in the WWE. And I misread that as it was the official theme song, but I still was like, I was watching for this SummerSlam because there was a whole lot of stuff going on with peacock symbolism last year, and how the SummerSlam is related to Tisha B'Av and a bunch of things that we had followed over the years. And a ton of that had to do with Hulk Hogan and earthquake symbolism in relation to Philadelphia and also the Golden Gate Bridge. But what's interesting is that the SummerSlam this year is going to be held on tomorrow, August 5th, which can be written as 5/8 or 8/5. And it's going to be held in Detroit. And another interesting thing about this SummerSlam being held on the date 5/8 or 8/5, if you go from this date to the anniversary of the Las Vegas shooting, it's a span of 58 days. And also, if you don't use the span of days, and you go from Jason Aldean's birthday to this date, it just so happens to be 5 months and 8 days, another 58. So a span of 58 days before the anniversary of the Vegas shooting, 5 months and 8 days after Jason Aldean's birthday. And another interesting thing is, if you look up the theme song for this year's SummerSlam, it just so happens to be the song Born to be Wild. I don't know, maybe I'll leave a little picture or something, but if you write out Born to be Wild, it just so happens to equal 58. So the theme song for this year even equals 58. It's held on 5/8, 58 days for the Vegas shooting, 5 months, 8 days after Jason Aldean's birthday. I mean, and what else is interesting? We had Sheryl Crow in the news talking about Jason Aldean, right? Sheryl Crow, if I can find that here. She was the main person who responded to Jason Aldean's supposedly racist song. But Sheryl Crow, I know her mostly from Kid Rock, right? Who's from Detroit, who has the song called Picture. And I think this has a lot to do with why we had the death of Sinead O'Connor, who Sinead O'Connor is famous for ripping up the picture of the Pope on October 3rd of 1992. And that was all by the numbers. But Pope Francis, if you heard out Pope Francis at Gematria, it just so happens to equal 58. And he's also 86 years old right now, just like how the Golden Gate Bridge opened 86 years ago, and Las Vegas equals 86. So, like I said before, that SummerSlam narrative, the reason I thought Jason Aldean might be important was due to SummerSlam, and it had to do with earthquakes in San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge. So that's why I pointed out the Golden Gate Bridge turned 86 years old. Further, if you look up the real #1 theme song for SummerSlam last year, instead of Jason Aldean, his was like the third theme song. The #1 theme song was actually the song called Shakedown by Kid Rock, right? The guy from Detroit. The guy who made the song Picture with Sheryl Crow. And when you think about Detroit as far as musicians, you probably think of Kid Rock, Eminem, and ICP, right? So I even blogged in here how I thought that Eminem was there's something probably going on with Eminem. And Eminem also he released the album called Music to be Murdered By in 2020. And, he has a video about the Las Vegas shooting, and he also has a song about the Manchester Arena bombing. And that's interesting because Eminem was just at the boxing match in Las Vegas, the Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr., and Eminem was the hype man for Terrence Crawford, who won the fight, right? So Eminem's the hype man, in Las Vegas, just before all this is going on, right after I'm talking about all the stuff with Jason Aldean and the number 58. And this is where the death of Angus Cloud from the TV show Euphoria comes in, because a lot of people talked about how he looks similar to the rapper Mac Miller, who died in 2018. And all of his fans wanted him to be Mac Miller in a movie about Mac Miller. But he said he would never do that. But the reason that Mac Miller is so important is that Mac Miller, he used to date Ariana Grande, right? And they broke up in 2017. No, I don't remember when they broke up offhand, but yeah, he dated Ariana Grande during the Manchester Arena bombing. Then they broke up the next year in May, just before Mac Miller had died. But Mac Miller's final album that released was called Circles, and it released on January 17th, 2020, which just so happens to be the same day that Eminem released Music to Be Murdered By, that has the video about the Las Vegas shooting, and it also has a song about the Manchester Arena bombing. And it connects even further here in a second, because there was a bunch of stuff that happened on 9/3 of 2018, just before Mac Miller died, that was all connected to Saturn and Nike and the number 93. That was the same day that Machine Gun Kelly released a diss to Eminem, and then Mac Miller would end up dying on September 7th that year. And September 7th is the day that Tupac got shot in Las Vegas. And of course, if you write out Mac Miller in this language of Gematria, Mac Miller just so happens to equal 58. Also 86, like Las Vegas, like this connection that I'm talking about. Of course, Eminem too, M, Marshall Mathers, right? Something to do with that there too. But the show Euphoria, the last episode that aired, just so happened to air on the 58th day of 2022 as well. And Mac Miller he died in the 58th month. So it's in the 58th month after Mac Miller died, and that is when this guy, Angus Cloud, died. So he died in the 58th month after Mac Miller died, right? So more 58 stuff going on there. And think how Mac Miller was shot or died on the same day Tupac was shot in Las Vegas. Tupac was all about the number 93. So was Biggie. 93 is a really big number associated with all this stuff. And remember, like I said, right before Mac Miller died, tons of things happened on the date 9/3, which I'll explain here in 1 second. But think about how the show Euphoria equals 93. Tupac, he died 9 months and 3 days before his birthday. Biggie died on 3/9, or also 9/3. The Las Vegas attack was 93 days after Mike Tyson's birthday. But on 9/3, right before Mac Miller died, that was the day that Nike started like sponsoring Colin Kaepernick. They made him like the face of Nike, if you remember. And everyone, all these mixed feelings about it, but Nike pretty much made Colin Kaepernick the face of their company on 9/3/2018. And that was just days before Mac Miller died. And Mac Miller has a song called Nike's on My Feet. And the Nike swoosh actually represents the ring of Saturn, right? Saturn in Gematria equals 93. Colin Rand Kaepernick equals 93. The word kneel equals 93. This is why, when George Floyd got his neck knelt on, right? That was 93 days before the anniversary of Colin Kaepernick first ever taking a knee against the Packers. But that was also in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that equals 93, and it's on 93 degrees west, and, a whole bunch of other stuff with the number 93, but even, Malcolm X equals 93, and Martin Luther King Jr. equals 93. Rosa Parks' full name equals 93. The sun's supposedly 93 million miles away. Saturn is, the original sun. And Jesus, even if you look it up, a lot of people believe that Jesus was crucified on the 93rd day of the year. And the word crucify equals 93. And that's probably why you have all these rappers doing the stuff with the cross, and you got Tupac on his 7-day theory, the Don Kill Illuminati, Killuminati or whatever, the Don Killuminati, the 7-day theory album right after he died, he's hanging on the cross, right? But anyway, the moral of the story is that Mac Miller had a song called Nike's on My Feet, and this was just after Nike made Colin Kaepernick the face of their company on the date 9/3. It was also the same day that Machine Gun Kelly made a diss song to Eminem. It was also the same day that Roseanne Barr, she said that when the new show The Conners comes out, she's going to move to Israel. And keep in mind that a lot of this goes back to Jewish mysticism and so on, right? Kabbalah. And even though it's not technically only Jewish practice, but Roseanne and Ariana Grande both study Kabbalah, right? And the Jews are all about the Old Testament, and the Old Testament god is most likely Saturn. So we got the Nike swoosh, which is Saturn's rings, or Saturn's ring. Saturn equals 93. Roseanne Barr says she's going to move to Israel on the date 9/3 that year when the Conners come out. If you look up Roseanne Barr, she shares a birthday with Colin Kaepernick on the date 11/3. And also, the final episode of Roseanne that she was on before she got kicked off the show and then they made the Conners, it was called Knee Deep. Like, what are the odds of that? Knee Deep. And she's also known for singing the terrible national anthem at the one baseball game. So once again, she's all connected to Colin Kaepernick, and she shares a birthday with Colin Kaepernick. Ariana Grande equals 93. Ariana Grande was born in the year 93. Manchester Arena broke ground in the year 93. There was a media story the following year after Mac Miller died on the date 9/3 about Ariana Grande suing Forever 21. Now keep in mind, Mac Miller was dating Ariana Grande at the time of the Manchester Arena bombing. And 1 year to the day after the Manchester Arena bombing was the day they released the episode Knee Deep with Roseanne, her final episode. And there's a whole lot more that goes along with this too, like, such as how after Mac Miller died, in February that year, we had Zion Williamson's Nike shoe blowout, which was a lot like the film Like Mike, that's about Michael Jordan, right? And these magic shoes that Little Bow Wow gets, and Little Bow Wow's born on 3/9, or also 9/3. And Nike is the goddess who slayed the bull. That's why we had Scottie Pippen's son die a couple years ago, all connected to Taurus, which is the bull. It was right when Kobe Bryant's, like, shoe company, can't remember what it was, something to do with Nike and Kobe Bryant's shoe story came out the same day that Scottie Pippen's son died, But Saturn is also the bull god, El, right? The Phoenician bull god is also Saturn. Think about Chicago Bulls. Think about how Michael Jordan's first retirement was in the year 93 after his father died on the Halakal rising of Sirius, right? July 23rd, but Sirius also equals 93, and then think about the theme song for Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls was the song called Sirius, which also, the light from Sirius is very important in Freemasonry, right? That's where you want to be illuminated to. Michael Jordan was also important because then Zion Williamson would later sign with the Michael Jordan shoe brand when he was in the NBA. So there's definitely something going on with all that Nike stuff and the symbolism and the number 93. But to go back to the number 58, Roseanne Barr and Colin Kaepernick both being born on November 3rd, that's the day that leaves 58 days in the year. And if you write out the Conners, it equals 58. And she said she's going to move to Jerusalem, that equals 58. And Roseanne Barr equals 58. And I'll explain some stuff about Kevin Spacey, who just got his charges dropped over his sexual assault case. Because Kevin Spacey equals 58, and sexual assault equals 58. And Anthony Rapp, the guy who originally said that he sexually assaulted him, his name equals 58. And he was kicked off of House of Cards on 11/3, right after the Las Vegas attack. And, think about House of Cards in relation to Las Vegas and gambling. And I also got a YouTube strike back in November on my birthday over one of the Kevin Spacey videos that I put out on November 3rd, 2017. And it really still to this day makes no sense why they would delete that video and give me a strike. But my name equals 58. And they deleted that video 5 months and 8 days, 5 years and 8 days after I put it out, right? On the day leaving 58 days in the year. So no doubt they, deleted that video and gave me a strike on my birthday because they wanted me to see the number 58 with the Kevin Spacey stuff. And then in May, they deleted another Kevin Spacey video that I had, and that was also by the same numbers. And, they deleted that 58 days before Kevin Spacey's birthday on the day that Tisha B'Av began. And, of course, then that was the day that Kevin Spacey was also, his charges were dropped for that sexual assault. And also, House of Cards, once you think about Jason Aldean and his tattoo and the Illuminati card that has the Ace of Spades and the Jack of Spades. And believe it or not, the whole reason I ever got into this knowledge with numbers was because of the death of Tupac when I was younger. And my friend Clint Elliott actually gave a speech about Tupac and how he died by the number 7, and Clint Elliott equals 74, just like Jesus and Jesus Christ, but Tupac Shakur equals, or just, maybe it's just Tupac. Tupac equals 74. Tupac Shakur equals 158, and he died 158 days before my friend's birthday who gave that speech. And I swear I went home and I looked that up, and that is like, after I saw that, I knew there was something important. Tupac to the number 7, like dying, whatever, he died age 25, 2 plus 5 is 7. He died at 4:03 in the morning, 4 plus 3 is 7. He had the 7 Day Theory album. He died exactly 7 months to the day, or he got shot 7 months to the day after releasing his All Eyes on Me album. And he got shot on September 7th. Septum is 7, right? And then he got shot on the 7th. All kinds of 7 with Tupac, right? And what I find interesting about all of this is the fact that Tupac actually died 58 days before my 14th birthday. And my name equals 58. And I also turned 40 years old last year, the day I got that strike. And you notice how Tupac Shakur equals 40. And November 3rd just happens to be 7 days before my birthday, right? The number 7 with Tupac, 7 days before my upcoming 41st birthday. And the word Super Bowl equals 41. And the Super Bowl is going to be 93 days after my birthday. So I think I'm spot on with what I'm talking about here. There's something going on with it. The things that I'm talking about, I know it's connected to the Super Bowl this year. And to go along with the number 93, let's just keep moving on here. I wanted to show all that later, but I just started going off. But notice the Connors currently have 93 episodes. That's pretty interesting. 93 episodes, the Connors. John Goodman, he's also King Ralph, right? We just had the new King Charles. But King Ralph is from Las Vegas. He's also, John Goodman's also Fred Flintstone. And my grandma had died just days before the Las Vegas attack as well. And that was connected to my uncle who died earlier in the year, who was all about the Flintstones. Even his wife's name was Betty, right? Betty and Barney and the Flintstones. And I have a feeling that that's important because their daughter died before I was born, and she got suffocated in a grain bin. And a guy I went to high school with just 2 days ago died from suffocating in a grain bin. And he died all by the numbers that I've been recently blogging about. So I don't want to talk about it that much on here just in case anybody watches it, but there's something really, really interesting about how that happened. And I think I'm supposed to see something with that old narrative with the Flintstones. And the Flintstones, the second movie they made, it didn't have John Goodman, but it was based in Las Vegas, called Rock Vegas. Then this was connected to the fat comedian symbolism that I've also followed, with the word Ralph in the movie The Big Lebowski, where he hates the fucking Eagles. So I don't know. I've been thinking it's something to do with San Francisco and the 49ers with Colin Kaepernick, but now I'm starting to wonder about the Eagles symbolism. And Roseanne Barr is also a fat comedian. But remember, right after the Las Vegas attack, Ralphie May also died. And Ralphie May was from Chattanooga, Tennessee, where my grandma was from. And I had blogged about him possibly dying, and then he ended up dying right after the Vegas attack. And, there's something significant there. My grandma, was even from like a suburb of Chattanooga called Flintstone, Georgia. You know, I didn't know that until she died and I saw it on her obituary. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with John Goodman, if anything. Maybe John Goodman or Roseanne's going to come up in the news. But another 93, Marshall Mathers, 93. And he released Music to be Murdered by 93 days after his birthday. Eminem released Music to be Murdered by 93 days later, on the same day that Mac Miller released his final album. So hopefully all that makes sense. I know it gets a little jammed up there, but hopefully you can see the significance of, you know, SummerSlam that's coming up tomorrow on 5/8 or 8/5, and how it's in Detroit and it's linked up to Eminem and Kid Rock. And then Eminem was just in Las Vegas, and we got this guy who dies who's connected to Mac Miller, and Mac Miller's important to Eminem's. His final album comes out the same day that Eminem's album about the Vegas shooting and also the Manchester Arena bombing comes out. And there's all these connections back to Colin Kaepernick and Roseanne, and you know, that's the same day that I had a Kevin Spacey video out, and let me find it here. But I had a video from 11/3/2017 about Kevin Spacey coming out as gay. And I was talking all about Charles Manson and the kneeling during the national anthem stuff at that time. And then Charles Manson would end up dying, and talked about how it's connected to the movie Stand By Me. And the only person missing was Kiefer Sutherland. Then on November 5th, we got the Sutherland Springs church shooting. But moral of the story is that I had this video about Kevin Spacey out on this day, and then on my birthday this year, a span of 5 years, 8 days later, YouTube gives me a strike and removes the video. And my name's 58, Kevin Spacey. The guy who accused him of sexual assault equals 58, sexual assault equals 58. And then on May 30th, they took down another video that I had put out on that day about Kevin Spacey. It was the same video. One was like unpublished and one was published. And they took them both down. And that was the day they took the second one down, was 58 days before Kevin Spacey's birthday. And then on that day, on his birthday, that's when all of the charges were dropped in his sexual assault cases. So they want me to see the number 58 by taking down them Kevin Spacey videos. And then you think about all the connections to me with Tupac, and then my birthday's 93 days before this upcoming Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas, and I'm going to be 41 years old like Super Bowl. And 11/3 is 7 days before my birthday, and Tupac's all about the number 7. Tupac's the reason I am awake to this knowledge, I guarantee you. I even wrote that in my book. Tupac in that speech. Notice in this blog post I even talked about how Kevin Spacey was connected to Super Bowl 50 that was held in San Francisco and in Levi's Stadium, but Kevin Spacey is also Lex Luthor in the movie Superman Returns, and in that movie there's like an airplane that it's going to crash into the stadium, I think, and maybe it wasn't San Francisco, but I remember it was connected to that, and I can't remember. But I know I have a video on this somewhere about Kevin Spacey in the film Superman Returns, and how it was linked up to Super Bowl 50, and that was just before the movie Batman vs. Superman came out in 2016, just before Tupac's mother died. And earlier that in 2015 in August, there was all that Batman stuff, like Morgan Freeman's granddaughter died, and they showed him at the Batman premiere with her, and a guy who dressed up like Batman that went around to hospitals died, and Batgirl Yvonne Craig died, and James Holmes, the Batman shooter, was sentenced. And on August 5th that year, there was a stabbing at a movie theater, I think it was, in Antioch, Tennessee. And Antioch is where the first Christian comes from, right? The term Christian comes from. And Christian Bale was Batman during the Batman theater shooting. And Donald Trump also said he was Batman in a helicopter at the Iowa State Fair that year. And he did that on August 15th, which was Ben Affleck's birthday. Ben Affleck would later go on to be the Batman in Batman vs. Superman. And it all connects back to Kobe Bryant and the number 34 and a bunch of stuff. But I'm going to leave that out of this video. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because I did talk about that with Super Bowl 50. And when Anthony Bennett died, or Tony Bennett, the singer, just died, he is super connected to Super Bowl 50, that is all about the number 58 in San Francisco. And think about Colin Kaepernick, who plays for the San Francisco 49ers. And we had the death of Ray Lewis's son. And Ray Lewis's final game was Super Bowl 47, where it was the Ravens versus the San Francisco 49ers that had the blackout. But that was when Colin Kaepernick was the quarterback for the 49ers. And that was just before Pope Francis became the Pope. And Pope Francis is named after St. Francis of Assisi. And San Francisco was also named after St. Francis of Assisi. And that Super Bowl was all linked up to the Batman theater shooting, right, with Hines Ward and the number 86. Think about Las Vegas equaling 86. And I have a whole book that I made the cover all about the number 86, and it had pretty much everything to do with this Batman symbolism and how I went to the midnight showing, the only midnight showing I've ever been to a movie on that day of that shooting. And you got Ravenstall here, who was the kicker, so they were showing the Steelers and the Ravens, and Luke Ravenstall was the governor, the mayor of Pittsburgh, or the mayor of Pittsburgh, I believe, at the time. And this guy also gave Mac Miller a key to the Pittsburgh after the Ravens had won the Super Bowl. But there's so much more that goes on with this. It connects to John Kerry and Skull and Bones. John Kerry's from Aurora, Colorado, and can't remember how it all works, but somehow he's married to something to this guy. Maybe I'll leave a note for it. I just can't think of how it all goes off the top of my head, but Hines Ward just turned 47. His name equals 47. Super Bowl 47. Here we go. Steelers play in Heinz Field. Heinz Field named after the great-grandfather of John Heinz, who died in a plane crash in Lower Merion Township, reminding us of Kobe, who played at Lower Merion High School. And after he died, his wife Teresa married John Kerry. John Kerry's from Aurora, Colorado. He's also in Skull and Bones. And in that movie, the Batman movie, before they blow up the football stadium, they flashed the number 322. Right, so, and Hines Ward was running the ball. There's a lot more to it than that, too, but talk about how Pope Francis is currently 86. The Golden Gate Bridge is currently been open for 86 years. Kinds of stuff here, but I guess the point I'm making is that it seems that they're trying to either show me Colin Kaepernick by taking down my videos, or they were trying to show me San Francisco, right? One or the other, with that number 58. And the more and more I look at it, the more and more I'm starting to wonder if it's connected to the Eagles, because Colin Kaepernick, the kneeling narrative is really connected to the Eagles and the flag being sewn in Philadelphia. But Colin Kaepernick also played college football in Nevada, right? Or Las Vegas. Not in Las Vegas, but he played in Nevada, which stands out a lot. And he also had Jimmy Garoppolo, who now went from the 49ers, and now he plays for the Las Vegas Raiders. And let me find this post here. Another thing in relation to Batman and Kevin Spacey, and which makes me think that is, a while back, I don't know what the date was, October 25th, 2021, I had these trolled comments on my blog post about The Dark Knight Rises and the football scene, just telling me I'm an idiot, blah, 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 blah. And then they left me a positive one on my Kevin Spacey one. Maybe you're on to something here, though, right? On a Kevin Spacey post. And I was like, well, what in the world, And it was from this post right here where I talked about an earthquake in Alaska, and we've recently had an earthquake in Alaska, but it's just interesting. They would do that, and then they would show me they say Kevin Spacey is good, So I'm wondering, it's got to be connected to that Batman symbolism, which I should make a whole nother video on, because it's all about Donald Trump's indictment, and you had the stuff with the Joker in tennis, who just won the French Open, and the Joker of the Denver Nuggets, who just won the NBA Finals, and Jack Nicholson attending a Lakers game for the first time in a couple years, and there's tons of stuff going on with it. Donald Trump said he was Batman in the helicopter, right? And, that's why we had the Mar-a-Lago stuff. We had a story about Kobe Bryant's helicopter in the news around that same time. And, that's why The Rock, his father, died on Shane McMahon's birthday just before Kobe Bryant died. And Shane McMahon was in a helicopter just before WrestleMania 34. And the number 34 is really important to that Batman Joker symbolism. Kobe Bryant even turned 34 years old 34 days after the Aurora Batman shooting. That's why they said Donald Trump did the 34 counts, and the courtroom was right outside outside of the courtroom there, they had filmed for the new Joker movie. But anyway, let's look at the death of Anthony. How would I keep calling him Anthony Bennett? Tony Bennett. I guess his name's Anthony, but let me find it here. Jimmy Garoppolo plays for the Raiders. Death of Tony Bennett. So we had the death of this guy, Tony Bennett. And his birthday is August 3rd, so you know it's connected to football, right? That's Tom Brady's birthday. And the word football equals 83. And a million other examples with 83 and the football. But Tony Bennett died on July 21st, which is the 202nd day of the year. And if you write out San Francisco, it equals 202. And he's famous for having a song called I Left My Heart in San Francisco. And what stood out to me was that Tony Bennett was also really big in the news right after Super Bowl 50 that was held in San Francisco. And in the college basketball tournament, one of the coaches for Virginia, or the coach for Virginia, his name was also Tony Bennett, and he collapsed. And the news kept making sure to tell us it wasn't the singer Tony Bennett, it was this basketball coach, Tony Bennett. And Tony Bennett, the singer, he just so happens to be good friends with Lady Gaga, who sang the national anthem at Super Bowl 50. And Lady Gaga just so happens to equal 58 in Gematria. And, of course, there's a whole lot of other things that go along with that, because later that year, that's when Colin Kaepernick first took a knee and a bunch of stuff. But I'm trying to think here. Tony Bennett equals 154. The Denver Broncos won Super Bowl 50 in Levi Stadium. And notice how they both equal 154. The Broncos finished that season with a 15-4 record. And the Cavaliers won the NBA Finals that year that began on the 154th day of the year. And now we got John Elway. We got Russell Wilson, who plays for the Broncos now, right? And Russell Wilson, his birthday was 154 days apart from John Elway's birthday. Elway was born in 83, right? That number with football. But Super Bowl 50 was all about the Black Panther symbolism. It was the white Bronco versus the Black Panther, and it had all to do with the number 58, right? Oakland 58, Black Panthers 58, Huey P. Newton, the founder of the Black Panthers, equals 58. The MVP of Super Bowl 50 was Von Miller, who wore number 58, and whatever, it was Super Bowl 50, and there was a time where he got his 50th sack in 58 games, but his full name equals 58. That Super Bowl was won because of defense. He was a defensive player, even defense 58. Cam Newton for the Carolina Panthers, he was the 58th quarterback in the Super Bowl. Like I said, Lady Gaga sang the national anthem. Lady Gaga equals 58. It was all about 58. Also, the national anthem was written in Baltimore at the Battle of Baltimore by Francis Scott Key, and Baltimore equals 58. Just think about the Ravens there. But what really stands out outside of 58 with all this is the fact that just before Super Bowl 50 with the white Bronco versus the Black Panther, they released The People versus O.J. Simpson, an American crime story. And O.J. Simpson just so happened to be in jail in Nevada at that time because he had a robbery in Las Vegas. And then, on the exact day, 10/1/2017, the day of the Las Vegas shooting, that is the day that O.J. Simpson was released from prison, right? So, look at that. I mean, Tony Bennett dies. It's connected to Super Bowl 50. That's in San Francisco. And that Super Bowl was all connected back to the Las Vegas stuff. And the number 58. And then Las Vegas is hosting Super Bowl 58 coming up. O.J. Simpson was also born in San Francisco, and he finished his NFL career with the 49ers. O.J. Simpson with the S exception also equals 58 in Gematria. So there's a definite pattern here. Lady Gaga is also going to be Harley Quinn in the upcoming Joker movie, right? She's going to be the new Harley Quinn. The other one was the same lady who played Margot Robbie, who is Barbie, right? The big Barbie movie that came out, the Harley Quinn stuff. So all this Joker stuff going on. She's friends with Tony Bennett. She's going to be the Harley Quinn. It's interesting too, like, you know, Peyton Manning for the Broncos that year. He always yells Omaha, right? And he's born on the 83rd day of the year. But Omaha's where Terrence Crawford is from, right? So just makes me wonder about the Eminem connection with Terrence Crawford there in the boxing narrative. And when I get to it, hopefully I'll make a video about Batman and the Joker symbolism, but a big day is October 4th. I've just been following that. It has a lot to do with that 424 with Donald Trump, and I was following the date August 6th last year, and I learned a bunch about Sandy Hook and Batman and the number 424, and 10-4 will be 424 days after the day I put my book out, August 6th, 2022. And I don't know, there's a lot of things connected to it. Joe Biden even tripped over that sandbag earlier this year. And October 4th is the day of the Back to the Future, right? That's the time on the clock, 10-4. And I was talking about how I thought it was connected to Michael J. Fox, and then Michael J. Fox tripped and fell the next day after Joe Biden. You also had the lady who played, her name's Elsa Raven, who played, I can't think of, Ida Strauss or whatever, who was on the Titanic. She played that lady in the movie Titanic, but she's the clock tower lady in Batman and Back to the Future. The Ravens were also founded in the year 96 in order of that Batman symbolism. That's the year that Tupac died, right? Tupac died in the year 96. Tony Bennett dead at the age of 96. Baltimore Ravens equal 96. Tupac's mother was a Black Panther, right? Tupac's mother was also from like Lumberton, North Carolina, or yeah, she was born in Lumberton, North Carolina. I'm pretty sure that's where like Michael Jordan was born or grew up or something of the sort. I know Michael Jordan has a connect. Oh, that's where his father was killed. Jeffrey Jordan, right? What was his? I can't think of what his dad's name was. That's where that is. His father was killed in Lumberton, North Carolina, where Tupac's mother was born, and Tupac also grew up some of his teenagers in Baltimore. And also Malcolm X. I know this because I've drove by it a million times, but Malcolm X was from Omaha, Nebraska. North Omaha. Remember at Super Bowl 50, they did all that stuff. With Beyonce, they made the X, right? It was all about Malcolm X. It was even connected to Super Bowl XX, right? Super Bowl 20, with the Chicago Bears and the 4-6 defense and a whole bunch of stuff. But, you know, think about it. XX, and then they made the X with Beyonce's thing, and then Twitter just changed their thing to X, right? Their logo. And X is the 24th letter. They did that on the 24th of July. And, you know, Malcolm equals 24. X is the 24th letter. Malcolm Little equals 24. The Super Bowl score of Super Bowl 50 was 24-10, right? 24. 10 is X in Roman numerals. So they did a lot of things with the number 24 there, and the letter X was Super Bowl 50. So Malcolm X. I bet you there's something important to him. He equals 93. He died age 39, just like Martin Luther King Jr. And remember all that stuff with Trump and Batman. It goes back to the date 4-4, the date that Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. Right? So there's something, it's definitely all interrelated, intertwined somehow. 221 is also Batman equals 221 in the capital letter ciphers. The Francis Bacon ones, 221. So does Aurora, Colorado. So does the James Holmes or whatever, the shooter of the Batman shooting. There's like a million. I have so much to do. I have a band gig at 5 o'clock, so I'm losing my train of thought. I've tried to organize this a little bit, but I'm losing my train of thought. But I wanted to stick with the 58s to begin with in this video, and then kind of move on. But there's just so many different things, and I'm so far behind on talking about these things that it's just hard to keep up with here. But I've also been getting trolled on my this old post I have about the Simpsons and Marge having a gambling problem, right? Think about that with the Vegas shooting. It was the episode 91. It's the one where they say Freemasons run the country. But think about the Route 91 Harvest Festival, Las Vegas, and so on. Right? It was on the day leaving 91 days in the year. And I had a bunch of synchronicity with vacation. And it makes me think of Vegas vacation. And I talked about this Simpsons episode here. And there was a story about I wouldn't even go on vacation in Florida. And Florida was a big thing in this episode here. The 91st episode. But I started looking into Vegas vacation and notice Wayne Newton's born on 4/3, like Florida, like Las Vegas, Nevada, like gambling. Randy Quaid, who's in Vegas vacation, he also was born on the same day as the Vegas attack. So, I guarantee there's something important to there. I really need to incorporate the Batman thing into this, but it's just so complicated. There's so much going on. But there's tons of stuff with the Ravens. I even thought Raven Simone might be important to this, and That's So Raven. I didn't even know that she's a psychic on the show. And then now was in the news the other day saying that she's a psychic. But the name Rambo literally means Raven's Nest, and Rambo being kicked off the episode of the Gematria effect was all by the umbrella symbolism, which I definitely will make a video on that if I get the chance. It's probably my next video. So the reason I picked John Rahm, I even bet on it, John Rahm to win the Masters, and he did. So it was all connected to Rambo being kicked off the Gematria effect episode. Tons and tons of stuff here. Tupac's stepfather even just died on 7/6. But yeah, I am going to leave it there only for the fact that I have to get ready for this band gig. And I don't know. I'm going to watch for oh, you know what? In relation to SummerSlam that's coming up tomorrow. And I mean, it doesn't mean anything bad's going to happen there, but there's something probably symbolic that's I'm supposed to see tomorrow and how it relates to SummerSlam. That's most likely. I mean, we'll find out, but after the Ravens had won the Ravens beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl in 2013. That was WrestleMania 23, and that was where Donald Trump was made into the Hall of Fame or whatever, right? Or I don't know what WrestleMania it was, but it was the one where they made Donald Trump, the celebrity person, into the Hall of Fame. But Donald Trump just so happened to be in WrestleMania 23, and he got stone cold stunnered, remember? And that one was in Detroit, where SummerSlam was going to be held this year. And this was the last time that the WWE had a major event in Detroit. It was WrestleMania 23. So now they're hosting SummerSlam. And, just think about Donald Trump touching the Western Wall the same day as the Manchester Arena bombing. Donald Trump's really big in the news again right now. Pleaded not guilty to the Capitol insurrection stuff. Think about how his name in all capital letters equals 424. If you write out Manchester in all capital letters, it equals 424. Think how Vince McMahon, he ended up retiring last year right after Donald Trump's wife died 4 months and 24 days after her birthday. Triple H has got to be connected to this somehow. But, yeah, just wanted to point out the last time that there was a WrestleMania in Detroit, it was when Donald Trump was on WrestleMania. We're currently also in the... Oh, crap. We're in the time... I'm just going to end the video. I ran out of space. But if you're still here, it's the 34th anniversary of the movie They Live coming out, which is important to this symbolism with the WWE. So I'll try to make some other videos. Peace out.